You good?
All right, all three cameras are running, go ahead. And who is this?
Alice Stratton interview, take one.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hello.
thank you very much for doing this.
Oh,
Your perspective on the events of that time and your husband and your family and yourself are invaluable to all of us.
good.
And it's just an easy conversation between, two acquaintances here. So there's no worries about performance. It's really your story, as you would tell anyone who was interested. So
Okay.
the first thing I wanted to start with was, I think I mentioned to you, my mom raised 5 kids by herself. Her husband left when I was 5 years old. Oops.
Can you imagine the timing?
Sorry, there's a weed whacker outside, and I don't want to spoil the sound by that. So we'll see if my wife can charm him into stopping.
Or threaten, depending on how it goes.
Right.
In Los Angeles, part of Carrie's job is to just walk around with a little fanny pack full of cash to just pay off.
Oh,
Because
Gardeners.
when they see you filming, all the gardeners go there and start working in the area just so that they can make money.
oh, really?
They start cutting lawns that are not theirs.
Oh,
And so the poor homeowner comes home and their lawn is half cut and they're going, what's going on here?
somebody just made some money, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that Carrie's dealt with that, so I'm going to go on with my question.
Well,
So, one of the things that I witnessed, was my mom, who was a woman of the 50s, who was a good wife and had an idea of her life. Her husband would go to work and bring home the money, and she would prepare the meals and everything else. Suddenly she had to go to work. She had to, be the sole,
He's gonna do it really fast, so just 5 seconds, okay?
okay.
I'm just gonna eyeball him.
Do you think we should cut?
Why don't I just continue my question and we'll see.
Okay.
So what I watched her do was go through this transition. If the wiring in the house gave up, or if she needed to wallpaper the walls, she couldn't afford to hire someone to do it. She had to do it herself. And she went through this transition of one life that she expected to have to this other life in which she was the one who was responsible
In charge,
for
yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And I think you can relate to this. So as soon as our weed whacker stops, I want to ask you about that experience for you, and I'll spell it out a little more clearly as soon as that noise stops. Okay? Thank you for your patience.
Just,
Never fails.
Yeah. You think we should cut?
He's probably almost done now.
Yeah.
I think it's like the second law of cinema physics. That the gardeners will come on the moment you start shooting. First law is, and of course you're thinking, what's the first law? First law is whatever you forgot to bring is the first thing you're gonna need.
Yeah. Is that good, Carrie?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, that eventful day when you rolled down the window and said, "Don't you die and leave me with these 3 kids."
Don't you dare die.
Far more colorful. Then the world changed,
right, yeah.
and you
You
would
waited
go-
for 3 months, October, November, December, till January.
Yeah.
Right.
When was it that you began to understand that the world was thrust on you now? You had these 3 children you had to be completely responsible for, and that your marriage both to a man and to a military was taking on new meaning for who you were?
Well, as soon as the shoot down came, I mean, it all changed because now I'm in charge of everything and I have nobody to help me. So that's when it started. Yeah.
And as a wife of a military man, did you feel, Alice, that you were prepared for what came? I know that Dick said that the two of you had talked about the possibilities and talked out what you wanted to do. For those future wives, those future women in the military who find themselves, or out of the military, who find themselves in similar places, what can you say about that?
Well, I think that it's good to talk about it and make some decisions about it, but it's going to cause the dismay and the depression and the sadness for everybody at any time when that happens. But they'll get over it if they acknowledge the fact that they have to move on and deal with it. But it's going to come. It comes with what happens, yeah.
And I remember my mom, late at night sometimes, I would hear her crying by herself down in the living room. When the kids she thought they were in bed and no one else was seeing, then she had a moment for her to feel the grief.
Right.
Did you experience something similar to that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The kids would be off in bed and I would sit there thinking, hey, God, why did you do this? Right.
And once you understood that Dick had been shot down and that he was alive, and
Well, I didn't know that he was alive when he was first shot down.
right.
Yeah.
Once you saw the published photograph,
Right.
how is it? When did you first start to meet with other wives who were in similar circumstances of your own?
Well, first of all, Dick and I had talked about what would we do if he got shot down, and had decided that we would move to Palo Alto, California, where we had some very good friends that had kids same ages as our three, and we did that, and we moved in just a few blocks away from them, and so I had that relationship. But I didn't meet right away with anyone because we didn't have any connections right away. Began to meet with the other wives a number of months later when they began to realize that somebody else was around. I didn't know there was anybody else around, and they didn't either. But when we met each other, found each other, we began to connect, began to meet, began to talk to each other. We would talk a lot, at night and connect and start to go together to talk to other groups around and tell them how they could help out and what they could do to speak out and help us. So,
in effect, you had your own tap code and your own wall that you shared what you were going through with people who were in the same
yeah,
situation.
absolutely. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Right.
And similar to the experience that Dick relates, you began to organize. They did the same thing. The first thing is the shock of the shoot down.
Right.
Not knowing if there's anyone. I mean,
Right.
when Ev Alvarez, who was the first shoot down, he looked around. He never saw any other Americans. And then slowly you begin to identify there's others out here.
Yeah.
And that's an important step.
Right. And that's what happened to us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I began to speak out and find some other women around and find that there were about half a dozen around me that lived not far around. So we would meet, talk, complain, bitch, and thank each other for being there and connect and tell what stories we had about what we'd heard and that sort of thing. So it was helpful, very helpful.
Is it fair to say in the beginning you met more in a support group fashion?
Right.
Like supporting each other rather than in an action group fashion?
In the beginning, it was just support.
Yes.
Right. It was not for a little while when we began to get out in the community and speak out.
And can you talk to me about what transpired that change? Like, when did you begin to realize that you needed to form a voice and speak out?
Well, we had a local chaplain named John Berger at Moffett Field, and he brought the wives together and helped us out whenever we had questions and complications. And he also was the one who would support our speaking out, get out, tell people, and I did. And that was hard but helpful to them and to me. So,
can you speak more about how it was both those things, how it was hard and helpful?
well, I wasn't used to being going out and giving speeches, so I was stumbling along. Had to write it up and try to memorize it and try to, so that was hard. But it also helped me because there were people out there saying, "Good on you, keep going, we'll help you." That was nice. So I found that there were people in the community that were willing to do what they could to help to bring the POWs home. And they really did. They would speak to others and pass the word around, and that was very nice.
And Dick spoke about when perhaps he might have been tempted to feel sorry for himself, or others might have been tempted to feel sorry for themselves. They would say to each other, "Hey, listen to what do you think your family's going through back there? You can't rest here. You gotta fight." And it sounds like the same thing.
Right.
When you were afraid to go up on that stage,
Right.
to give that speech, did you think of Dick and get courage and
Absolutely, absolutely, because that's who I was doing it for and why I was doing it, and for the others too, but mostly for my husband. So I had to say to myself, "Get up there, you!" So I did.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And let's say it's fair to say the government was not encouraging of you speaking out.
Amen. In the beginning, they were not. They told us, in effect, to shut up. That it would be not wise to do that. But we listened for about 2 seconds, and then we went out and did what we felt was the right thing to do, which to get the news out there, get the people to talk about it, get the people to send out messages to others, and to start to get this going around so that the message would go around all around the country.
So speak to me about the first time that they've officially told you this. Ladies, be quiet, be good housewives, and we're taking care of this. And then I'm assuming you met together after that. And what was that meeting like, where you decided, we're not going to do this, we're going to speak up?
Have you heard the word bullshit? That's what we said. Are you kidding? We said. Out we go. We can't do this. We can't just sit here and be quiet. And we didn't.
And you were involved with the West Coast
Families there.
So it
yeah.
was Sybil Stockdale?
Absolutely. Yeah, she was down south of us, but anyway, she was, yeah.
And can you speak about meeting with Sybil, and because she kind of took a primary role as well?
Yeah, absolutely. She took a big role. Initially, she lived closer to where we were, but then she was down south further. But she organized us and started us up, and that was very helpful because we began to meet regularly, and that was good because we met with others from down to the south and where we were, and it was nice. It was good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And when was the first time, if you can recall, when you heard about the idea of the POW bracelets?
Heard about the POW bracelets. I'm not sure if I can exactly remember when that was, but they were very nice and very good, and people loved them, and I bought a bunch of them and would start passing them out, and people liked them, and it worked.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And was there a point where you became surprised as you would walk down the street where you notice one or another individual wearing a bracelet, and you realize, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speak to me about that.
Yeah. Well, it was a nice surprise, and I would always go over and thank them and appreciate that they would do that, because a lot of people started to do it. and I was handing them out and passing them out and getting people to do it. But when I'd see somebody that I never even heard of or knew and was wearing one, I said, "Wow, good on you," because it made us feel good. Yeah, we appreciated that very much, to pass the word out.
And talk to me about your sons. How did you explain or help them cope with and understand what they were going through about their dad?
Well, you say son, it's S-O-N-S.
Yes, I said sons.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear.
I didn't articulate it well.
Okay. They were not as very happy with what had happened, and I would always tell them what was going on, and they treated it okay. I mean, they were sad and as I was, but they moved on with it. So, yeah.
And did they ever come home from school saying that, was there any way in which the world also identified them as the children of a prisoner of war?
Sometimes, but not that much. It was not a big deal with them. They were just little guys, they very young. So other friends didn't know about it that much, or it wasn't that a big a deal for them. But as the time went on, it became more significant as far as their friends knowing about it and all. But anyway. Because, they were just 1, 3, and 4 when he got shot down, so they were little.
Your husband is a hell of a guy.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and he is, shall we say, if I met Dick 20 years ago, I wouldn't assume that if I met him 20 years later, I'd meet much different of a man. He's a man of his convictions. You can count on him. Is that correct? Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is, sir. Yes, you better believe that.
And when you eventually got word that the POWs were going to be returning, I know at the time the military psychologists and stuff spoke to you, warned you of they're probably going to have perhaps psychological difficulties, all these things. Talk to me about your knowledge of Dick and what were you afraid when he was returning that he might be scarred in ways that would go beyond you?
No, I was just excited. Could hardly wait. No, I knew he'd be okay. I did, but my youngest son, I tell the story about when Dick finally came home and called and said here he was, and I screamed, "Dad's home!" And Charlie, the younger one, looked at me and ran and hid under the bed, because he didn't know him at all. He was only a year old, so he didn't know whether he was glad or not. But the other two were happy. But Charlie was happy once he got to know him again.
Yeah. And how did you help them through that time when he was gone to keep him close for them? Did you show them pictures, or was there ways that you also, or you learned from the other mothers?
Well, Dick eventually could write some letters. And so we had that to talk about and how to write them back. And so that was very helpful. And we could share that information with the other kids and other wives and talk about that. So in the beginning, there was nothing. It was a hard time. But once the letters started to come, then it was a much different time, because the kids can then write back and they could say thank you and tell them what they were doing, and that was good, yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that Dick Stratton is a man of principle.
Yep, that's very fair to say.
And is owing to that he is who he says he is, that you can count on him. What did you, when in your fight, well, let's back up a little bit to the bowing incident. You probably would have witnessed that film, that piece of film where he's bowing mechanically and everything else. That's not the husband who left years ago. What went through you? Did you look for telltale signs that he was acting for the camera, or were you worried that something so horrible had happened to him?
Everything. I was shocked, delighted, puzzled, pleased, didn't know what to think. I just didn't know what was going on, but at least he's alive. That's so that was hard though, because that was not expected.
Right. And did that, when that was published in Life magazine, it obviously probably brought reporters to your home. I
Yep.
mean, there were people who were wanting to know, what's your reaction to this? And Dick talks about this, that one of the things that they tried to help each other with in the prisoner of war camps was what he called their 15 minutes of fame. In other words, reporters are going to come and ask you questions. You only got a minute to say what you're going to say. What did you go through? How did the other wives help you prepare for that? Or were you alone at that point? And how did you respond to that influx of press and public?
Well, again, I said, May Rose Evans, who was one of the leaders for us, our group, she would talk to us about how to handle things like that, and when to shut up and when to speak out, and it was nice to have her around. Even though she was a bossy lady, she was a very helpful lady, so that was good. And she helped all of us. We had a nice little group, and she was kind of our captain.
And when you would speak to the public about the plight of the POWs,
Right.
one very powerful thing that you could do is tell the personal side of worrying about your husband, about all the consequences for your children.
Right.
And that's a powerful thing. Other mothers, other parents could relate to that, could understand that. Is that something that you at times focused on as a way to communicate the need for the government to stand up and make action happen in regard to the POW?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, right. And we all did that, talked about what it was happening to our lives because of what had happened, and how hard it was, and how much we would appreciate their help in any way to bring him home.
Beautiful. And it's so interesting how there was a parallel going on in the Hanoi prisons, where by sharing with each other through the tap code, through the wall, how they missed you, how they, I wonder what my kids are doing, and I want
Right.
to teach my kid baseball. And these two parallels were going on, that it's the human side of that. At what point did you begin to feel that you were making headway as the wives of really starting to get the plight of the POWs in the public eye?
Actually, very soon. We were told, as I mentioned, told to shut up and be quiet, and we didn't, and we began to speak out, and it began to really help, because people began to join us and come and connect with us and say, can we help, and what can we do, and we'll add the story too, and we'll tell it. And that was very helpful, to know that there were other people out there that were on our side and were listening and cared and shared, and so that was good.
When did you begin to suspect, or when was that suspicion confirmed that your husband was undergoing torture?
When Doug Hegdahl, who was a POW with Dick, came home 2 years later, he got released, one of the early releasees, and he called me up from DC and said, I'm here, can you come and see me? And I was on the plane immediately, and I was very saddened at the story I heard about what had happened to Dick, because it was sinful, awful, shameful, terrible. And I suspected but never knew the truth, and he told me the truth. And I walked out of that office ready to fall down and die, but I stood up and said, okay, I'm going to go on, and it's over, and maybe he'll come home, he'll come home. But it was awful to hear what had really happened to him. Yeah.
That is really powerful.
Yeah, it was hard, yeah.
To hear that. I lost everything in that moment. When you understood that Dick had experienced these inhuman things, and I wish I could say inhuman, but it was humans who did it to him. And were you then worried about how he would adjust to that, what scars he might bring home?
No, that's an interesting question. No, I never. He's a marvelous man. I never thought that would be I knew it would be always part of his life forever, to some extent, but I didn't think it would influence the way things would be with us. Yeah, and it didn't.
No, he is a marvelous man. When the POWs were brought home, in general, returning warriors from Vietnam were treated with a lot of negative. There were a lot of things going on with the anti-war movement, everything else.
Right.
There was a lot of negative treatment. I think it's fair to say for the government, the return of the POWs was one of the few things that they could claim a success in the war. And so they were, I think, genuinely returned and genuinely greeted back.
Right.
But they were also an opportunity, let's say, for the government to show its colors a little bit and say, we did this good
Absolutely, and they did show their colors big time.
thing. Right.
Yeah, and people came and marched and yelled and screamed and said hooray, and yeah, it was very nice.
But at the same time that it was really rewarding to be welcomed back, a number of the former POWs have expressed a kind of confusion about that. First of all, they had spent years behind bars and, in solitary and going through horrible conditions.
6, 7, 8
else,
sometimes, yeah.
and not really knowing what was going on in the world, and suddenly they're back and they're in ticker tape parades and,
Right.
and being called heroes. And they may or may not feel that that's appropriate. I think it is appropriate, but all that attention suddenly, you've spent years in 4x8 rooms, and now you're suddenly greeted by tens of thousands of people who are cheering. And as Dick's wife, as someone who knows him better than anyone else in the world could. Maybe even in some ways better than himself. How was it for you as you watched him make that transition? Like, in essence, the world needs heroes. So whether or not the former POWs felt they were heroes to the world.
Right, they were.
But sometimes when the world creates its heroes, it doesn't really ask the question, what do those heroes need? It's the world's need is for a hero. You knew Dick as a man, as a human being, as a deep, thoughtful, caring person. When he returned as a hero, what were his needs? What did you see inside him that you realized, you know what, I need to help him here, or I need to protect him here, or I need to give him time to talk or think? What can you say as someone who knows him intimately?
I think it was important to give him some privacy because there was a lot of people that wanted to grab a hold of him and bring him in and capture him again. So I think I had to stand by his side and say, no, he's busy, no, he can't, he's, blah, blah, blah. and just to help him not to have to do all that as much as he had to do it himself. Some of it he had to say no, but anyway, I supported him 100% on that because he needed some privacy.
And, you know, even back when we first contacted Dick, you know, he positively glows when he speaks of you, and he speaks of you with such admiration and respect, and for the job that you did and the other wives have done. And I couldn't even begin you both amaze me. There's, you know, when couples live together for years, you know, everyone's got their little habits, you know, this guy throws his socks down or whatever it is, little things that irritate us, right?
Especially if they're dirty socks.
Exactly. You know, my wife is if I clip my toenails anywhere near the house, like I have to go out in a field somewhere. She has a thing about toenails. So, but those little things that are familiar between couples, and you know them so well that you could even, like, you could quote them, you know, like they're the kinds of things where we're comfortable with each other. When Dick first came home, I imagine there had to be a period where you were anxious a little bit, like, is it business as usual yet, or is it, you know, treat your dad, wait a minute, don't talk right now, don't run through the house. And then was there a point where things began to normalize and you knew everything was going to be all right?
Oh, there was a scary time in the beginning because I didn't really know what he's going to be like, because, I mean, he'd been really badly tortured and mistreated, and I thought, oh my God, Henry, what have I got coming home here? But it didn't take long. I knew he was back to normal in a little while, but in the beginnings I was a little scared before I got a hold of him real quick and gave him a big hug. And so it didn't take long.
And McDaniel tells a story. I said, Dorothy, you know, do you remember the first time that you let yourself get mad at Red? You know, he just did something and you just, you know, finally said, okay, the honeymoon's over, you know.
Piss you down here.
Exactly. And she said, oh, I totally remember it. He said something about the kids, and I turned to him and I said, don't you ever about my children. And he just kind of, his eyes got this big, and I walked into the kitchen and my mother was there, and she said, Dot, it's just so good to hear you yelling at him again. And that's when it becomes human and family again. And do you remember moments, anything like that, where you finally let yourself completely let your hair down again with Dick? Was that a process that you had to go through?
No, I don't think so. I think it was always there.
Always there. That's so beautiful. That
Yeah.
You have such history together. And
Yeah,
such
we
comfort.
did, indeed.
Yeah.
A very good history, right from the beginning. Yeah, and it was solid and it stayed and it was there when he came back. Yeah.
And if you were going to give some advice to a future mother and a future wife who marries not only a man but a career, a military career.
Yeah, military person.
From all the experience that you've gone through, what kinds of advice would you give a young mother of today about the things and how to prepare herself for what she might encounter in life?
Well, I think that the important thing is that you have to know that something might happen. It just might. And so you have to be, keep together, stay together, talk together, but know that there might be a time when you can't do that anymore, and just put it in the back of your head and talk to yourself about what will you do when he's not there anymore. But you don't have to do that much, but you have to know that it's a possibility. It could happen for any military person, could be gone. So you have to accept the fact that that's a possibility and not deny it and not, run away from it. And talk about, like we did, talk about Dick and I talked about what happens if he gets shot down. Where will we go? What will we do? Who will we be with? And we did talk that out and prepare about that, and that was helpful.
So it's fair to say that when you took action, you knew already that Dick was behind those actions.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
We'd shared that and talked about it and helped each other out on how to deal with it.
Beautiful. And in the Navy's research on the former POWs, they found, somewhat to their dismay, that this group of men who went through these horrible experiences and deprivation and loss and shoot downs and everything, although to a man they wouldn't want to repeat that experience or wish it on anyone else.
Amen, yeah.
So many of them said they came out better men
Yeah, they
than
did.
they went in.
Yeah.
Did you feel that for Dick and for yourself? Were you a stronger woman at the end of this, upon Dick's return? Were you a different and stronger woman?
Yeah, because I had to be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you had to grow up and be up. So, yeah, indeed. It changed things for you, but not to the point where it changed things that much between he and I, but I had to be a stronger person because I was by myself with my 3 little guys and had to grow up and show up.
Do you remember the first time you ever saw Dick Stratton?
I sure do. Yeah.
Can you tell us the story, please?
I was in California, had moved from Michigan with a group of friends of mine. We'd all gotten together at lunch one day around our work area and said, we thought we'd meet somebody. We never did yet, so what are we going to do? Let's go to California, and we did. We all got in our cars, within the month and drove to California, got an apartment together, and then we settled down and looked around and had a good time and then said to each other, we haven't met anybody. So we decided to have a party, and we did, and we invited everybody had to invite 3 guys. I invited 3 of my guys from work. They were psychiatrists and all. I'm glad they didn't come because they were a-holes. But anyway, somebody brought Dick, and that was it. He and I met and clicked right away, and so off we went.
Do you remember any of the things you talked about that first time you met him?
Oh, we talked about our everything, our families, and what we had in common, and we connected.
And
Yeah.
did he ask you out that day?
Yeah, well, right away we got connected, and then he called me back within a few days and said, let's go out and have a date, and it was within a couple of months that we were married. Yeah.
Where were you married?
We were married in, Palo Alto? Right? Alameda, I mean, yeah.
Did you have a big wedding?
Yeah, it was really nice.
I'll bet you looked absolutely stunning in your bridal gown. I'm sure Dick would say the same thing. When you tell the story of meeting Dick or something to your children now, and they are now grown and have children
Right.
of their own, what does it mean to you to be a family, to pass that lineage on, to pass on your relationship with Dick? It's part of the myth of your family is who you are. I mean, I'm already affected by it, and I've only known you peripherally, but I will always carry the story of Alice and Dick with me. It's just, I find you both so remarkable. How is it as your subsequent generations, your granddaughters, and your son grows up, becomes a man, gets married, and how is that for you? Can you speak about family for you and what it means through the generations?
Well, we are very blessed. We had 3 marvelous sons. One lives right here by us, and they've got 4 daughters, and another son lives, a couple of other sons. One lives in different places in the air, not here, close by. But it's been nice that they are part of our lives big time. Yeah. Yeah.
And I imagine when you walk with Dick on the beach, or it's just the 2 of you, and you can wake up in the morning and say, "What do you want to do today, Dick?" You know, that does it every now and then occur to you that this is a freedom that you never stop appreciating? Because Dick didn't have that for so long. Not the freedom to walk and take a walk or go out in the sun.
I say bless you, thank you, God, every single day for that. Yes, and it certainly does occur to me. Phew. Yes,
So when you can feel the sun and the wind, the morning sunrise on the beach, you feel the blessing of freedom.
absolutely. I don't even have to feel the sun and the wind. I just am blessed. Yes, right.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And Dick is a spiritual man.
Mm-hmm.
He was 6 years in seminary, so clearly he's thought a lot about his spiritual nature and what it means to
Right.
him. And in what little time I've spent with the two of you, I can feel that's a foundation that you both share.
It's been important and very good. Yeah.
Speak to me about the power of a spiritual life in both family and in struggle and hardship. What does it mean to you? Was that something that you could lean on at times when Dick was gone? That you shared this feeling of there is something bigger than us?
Absolutely. I'm very grateful for that. And could say, thank you, God, that you are there and you will help me and you have been and you will again. So, yeah,
Beautiful, Alice.
yeah.
I've asked you all the questions that I have, but is there anything that you would like to talk about or bring up? Or Dick, is there something that perhaps you might want to ask Alice here, or think, is there any?
Why did she marry me?
Why did you marry Dick?
Oh, just shut up, Richard.
Tell him about the airline pilot that you married with the big white house.
Oh, that's a funny story. When I met him, I didn't know anything about him. So somehow I got the idea he was an airline pilot. And I thought, oh, isn't that wonderful? And then I found out.
We
What?
had to share pictures, and the only picture I had was a picture of me with my family. I was still in the seminary, but I was in black suit, and we were standing next to a big white house with porticos and all that in Mount Vernon, Virginia. And she thought that was my family home.
I did.
Well, you thought you'd really hit the gold mine, didn't you?
Right. And then, surprise.
Pat and Dawn went back and reduplicated the picture. We have a picture of Pat and Dawn standing in the same place my parents
wonderful.
were at that corner of Washington's
Wonderful.
home.
Well, you have something greater than wealth could ever buy.
Right.
That's for absolutely certain, right?
Yep.
It's remarkable to talk with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really,
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
We good, guys?
Yeah, we're good. We should do a tail marker
A
and
tail
a
mark?
new color chart at the end.
Okay.
Technical stuff.
I forgot why.
Just hold 1 second, Alice. Carrie's going to bring in just a chart for us to shoot. And you're done.
Okay.
We just need to do a little bit of technical stuff here for a second.
This as well, the gray card?
Yeah, gray card and the color chart, if you will, please. Okay, try to aim it toward the light.
All right, let me do it.
Sorry, Alice.
All right, hang on just a sec. Okay, I've got that. Now the camera's running.
All right, I'm good.
All right, then we need to do a tail marker. Do you still have your slate out there?
Do we need to do another room tone?
It'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do tail markers.
Tail marker.
Oh, that's a good noise.
Then we're just going to be quiet for about 30 seconds so we get what's called room tone, which is the sound of the room, so that the sound engineers can take that out. All right, so this is room tone for Alice Stratton. That's good. Thank you so much.
Let me
That's
grab
a
these
cut.
mics, Alice.